Well, George, cheers.
Cheers.
Podcast starts now.
Podcast starts now.
To 3 beautiful years.
Sorry, I already drank. I'm 5 martinis in.
Okay, sorry. Redo.
Okay. I didn't know you were going to
George.
do a whole bit.
Oh,
I'm sorry. No, I should have yes-anded. I panicked.
No, it's okay.
Start again.
I just, after 3 years, I never want us to lose the excitement.
You're right.
And the rush of, coming up with an hour of comedy on the spot. So I guess I want everyone in this podcast, you and me, to raise a glass to 3 years of podcasting excellence. Cheers.
I can tell this is from New York.
Yeah, that is good water.
Wow.
Yeah, did you like the bit?
I did, but guess what? It did make me wish we had martinis.
Yeah.
Imagine doing this with martinis.
Oh my God. I mean,
I'm almost like, let's literally pause this recording. Go get pre-batched martinis, bring them back, pour them out.
actually, I'm like, it's New York City. Can they not deliver a martini?
Right. Postmates? Wait, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
There's a trailer for that new movie where Nick Cage plays Dracula.
Okay.
And Awkwafina she's talking to Nicholas Hoult, whose job it is to bring food to Dracula. And she has this line where she goes, "You're like the dude that brings the villain his Postmates." And it makes me laugh every time because it's like such a type of contemporary joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so you're the guy that gets the Uber to hell.
Well, there's something so funny about trying really hard to be contemporary where you almost, it has to be self-parodying for it to actually work. Like, because it's so clearly like the script was written with like insert topical here.
Joke. Yeah.
And it's like no one even says like, no one would say that.
No one would say that.
That's not in
Which,
the
by the way, is not a reason enough to not say something because, of course, it's art. And Nick Cage playing Dracula in a sort of self-referential way is the highest form of art one can produce.
Of course, we're not arguing there. But to have an unnatural, you're the guy that delivers the Postmates.
It's web series humor. Wait, web series humor is now mainstream humor.
Oh my God. Well, because web series humor then became like Marvel humor.
Yes.
And now that's like the dominant form of humor.
100%. And actually, the guy that delivers the villainous Postmates is Marvel humor at its finest.
Yeah. Well, and God, it's weird to do a podcast and where you want to shit talk. But
I could sense you tense up. I will say that right now.
But I literally am like,
are you friends with Nick Cage?
I'm not friends with Nick Cage. I'm not friends with Awkwafina, and I'm not friends with Nicholas Hoult.
Okay, well, Nicholas Hoult and I are actually very close.
Okay, well, I lied, and Awkwafina's coming over for dinner later.
It's not her fault. She didn't write it.
No, but she's like the canary in the coal mine for that type of humor.
Oh.
When you see her, you're like, oh, I know what's going to happen.
Yes, and by the way, that's not her fault.
No. God, no.
It's because she is a comedy. She's a comedy relief. She's someone you call for comedy relief.
Yeah. And usually when you didn't have an idea.
Yes, exactly.
So you're like,
yeah, people are sort of like, all right, put her in, do your thing. Come on, Nora, ham it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
That's dark.
Yeah, thankfully we turned down all those roles and only take starring roles in Marvel films.
Thank God we refuse to be put in a box, aka refuse to be put in a movie, aka refuse careers.
Aka refuse to book any auditions.
Yeah, when we do an audition, of course we get it, and then we say, no, I don't want to be seen as that.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for the perfect role.
I'm really sorry I derailed the conversation when we were talking about martinis because I do want to say, I know we've both been feeling this way recently. The way I specifically need a martini at all times.
I absolutely relate.
What is that? And don't say alcoholism.
It's close.
It's not, because I actually I barely even need, I need the single sip. I need basically like touching a glass, feeling that it's cold, and then having a single sip. Well, I'm not even craving the alcohol.
It's a beautiful ritual.
Yeah.
You also know that within 5 minutes, you're going to be feeling a little loopy.
That's true.
In a way that's like, in this attention economy, like who has the time to sort of sip a glass of wine and like wait it out?
Yeah.
Like a martini is like, let's get this started.
Wait, so are you saying a martini is pro attention is like a way to resist the attention economy, or because it's so fast?
I think it's part of the
It's part of the attention economy. So actually, you would think a martini is a sort of nostalgia play. It's a way to resist the attention economy. It's a way to go back to basics. But actually, you're playing right into the hands of Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly.
A martini
100%.
is the drink equivalent of scrolling through your Twitter feed for like 2 seconds because you need a hit of dopamine.
That's actually is.
Very true.
It actually is.
So what is the alternative?
So what is the alternative?
Drinks-wise. Here's what I'll say. It is not mocktails. Because let me tell you something. There is nothing more capitalist than mocktails. The way they are pushing them on everyone. And I am pro-sobriety, and I am pro getting a soda and bitters, and I am pro having a glass of water. But the mocktail lobby is out of control.
It's insane, and it should actually be free. And actually, like the way that it's not free, or at least like a soda price, drives me crazy. Because it's like, well, I know it's expensive in a drink. It's the alcohol.
I know. But here's the thing. It's not even. Like it actually goes all the way to the top because then you're like, wait a minute. Your eyes open for the first time in your entire life, like the Matrix. Alcohol shouldn't be that expensive either. A tequila soda should also not ever be like $9.
Wow. I mean, you're right. But at least
because in fact, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I have no financial figures to back this up. But part of me is like, guess what? A well drink in terms of just making it, probably cheaper than a complicated mocktail that has like elderflower essence. Like genuinely.
Wow.
It's like we're offended that a mocktail that has like ginger, carrot, and mandarin is more expensive.
I'm not ordering a juice.
Well, that is, I mean, honey, what is a mocktail if not that? Also, they've done like years of scientific research to create like things that taste like alcohol that aren't.
They don't even, they're always too sweet.
Yes, that's true.
They're not a cocktail. It's like a different thing. It's like, this is a fancy soda. And like, thank you. Sometimes I want a fancy soda.
And by the way, a fancy soda is better than a mocktail.
Just call it a fancy soda.
I wish I would remember the brand. I had the most incredible root beer the other day.
Okay.
End of story. And I was like, am I going to start just ordering root beer constantly? I was like, this should be illegal. This is like having a slice of cake.
Yeah. I mean, soda is truly illegal. It is like, you remember my famous job from my past where I would Google Coca-Cola every morning.
And then find ways to be positive about it, to like,
well, they would send like health experts to local news stations.
yes,
to lie,
and
to
then
people.
They would be like, have a salad, maybe with a soda.
Oh, and you know what goes great with that is like a small Diet Coke.
Do you know what I've noticed recently is that I have been consciously going to the movie theater more to order a Diet Coke.
The luxury of a soda at the movie theater is like peak. I mean, talk about. That's the martini of the movie theater.
Yes, that's the martini of the movie theater.
Actually, I don't want a martini.
You know what? I'll say, okay, so one time I went to a Regal movie theater. I'm actually a Regal member.
Oh, congratulations, by the way.
And yeah, it was a very selective process. And I get there and I was, my friend had already been there. Now, Regal has a full bar. I get there and my friend had surprised me by buying me a tequila soda.
Mm.
Now, I, of course, had to act like I was excited about that. It was a gift.
You're not ungrateful.
What was I thinking inside, though?
I wish I didn't have this.
I wish I had a Diet Coke.
Mm-hmm. We need to talk about this because a movie theater is like one of the few public spaces where it's like, I actually don't need or want alcohol.
It is. Yes, exactly.
And so it's like, can I just enjoy this? Like, this was the one space where I was like, a drink is not needed. And like, I'm not talking, like, I'm just taking something in. Like, I don't want, like, sometimes I want to be able to be like, I don't want to drink. And it's not like a big move. And now that bars are in all movie theaters, suddenly everyone's like, well, are you going to get a drink? And it's like, well,
no,
I don't want to, but I don't want to imply that I'm like not present. Like, I don't want to imply that I'm like thinking of this as work.
Of course. And by the way, I'm not getting cauliflower either. So don't even think about asking that as a follow-up question.
I'm not even getting popcorn, and I'm sorry.
No, I actually sort of agree. Popcorn, listen, if someone gets popcorn, I'll have a little handful.
One. I'll have exactly one handful.
And by the way, being hungry at a movie theater, there's nothing more beautiful than that because guess what? After that, you can go to dinner.
You can have dinner.
Let yourself be hungry, and I don't mean that in a sort of eating disorder way. I mean that in a delayed gratification way. Have a Diet Coke. Let yourself be hungry. Go get a burger.
You know what I wish? Actually, I wish I want more nuts at movie theaters.
That's genius.
Because a popcorn, if I'm actually hungry,
Yeah.
popcorn doesn't do anything for me.
No. And by the way, popcorn is one of the most overrated foods in the history of mankind.
We need to look into the popcorn lobby and how they establish themselves as like the thing to eat during a movie.
Right. Yes. And can I say something? In what world is popcorn good?
In what world?
It is, I would say it is strictly medium. I'm not saying, oh God, it's disgusting, I'm going to throw up. But it's like, to pretend it's anything other than a 5 out of 10 is madness.
The only form of popcorn I like is like
Kettle corn?
stay-at-home popcorn, where you like make it yourself and you're like, cosplaying like 90s girl.
Of course.
Who like,
Well,
has,
when
like,
you're
a
making
cozy
popcorn,
sweater.
by the way, when you're making popcorn yourself at home, you are in a commercial for Blockbuster.
Yeah.
You are literally in a commercial that's like, take the movies home.
Yeah.
Well, little did they know that would be the death knell for movie theaters, by the way, in the streaming age.
Yeah. Who knew Blockbuster would literally kill cinema?
The way they keep trying to reinvent the movie theater is so frustrating to me. Alamo Drafthouse, I would never wish ill on any business, on any small business, especially one that started in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
But Alamo Drafthouse needs to take a long, hard look in the mirror.
Uh-huh.
Because if I wanted to, I could go and check their tax documents and see which party they were funded by. And let's just say it's not the Democrats.
Yeah. They are like doing, it's almost psyop. They're like doing what they think a liberal wants. And it actually is so see-through. And we know there's dark money in there.
I have to say.
This is crazy. We're actually just...
Okay, sorry.
We're
We don't have to
becoming...
talk
No,
about
I actually like it. I like that we're like turning into a conspiracy theory podcast like within the 3-year anniversary episode.
I mean, the thing is, like, pretty much everything is a conspiracy.
Let's start there.
Like, I'm not kidding. And I don't even mean that as a joke. I'm like, everything is dark money. Everything is dark money. Nothing, the idea of supply and demand is a farce. Literally nothing is popular because of demand.
This is truly the most genius thing I've ever heard.
But do you know what I mean?
Of course.
The number one lie we are told, do you know that chart that's like an X and it's like one line is supply, one line is demand?
Yeah.
That is essentially... Like, people will look back at that and be like, this is where it all went wrong. Like, people believe this. Can you believe? It's like when people talk, it's like how people think Jesus turned water into wine. It's like, well, it's sort of a metaphor. Supply and demand is a metaphor. And on top of that is built a corrupt economy.
Yeah. I mean, I even look at like a restaurant in New York City. It's like a restaurant opened in New York City. And it's like, oh, well, that's a small business. I've never heard of this restaurant before.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, because it takes a shit ton of money to open a restaurant in NY City. And like, so something's going on here. Something bigger.
Exactly. And then you hear, no one makes money in restaurants. You're like even famous chefs like are not that rich. You're like, okay, there's no money in restaurants, like blah, blah. But then you're like, wait a minute. The investors are rich.
Somebody's doing it, right?
They're in restaurants.
Unless they're doing it for free drinks.
Unless they're doing it for free drinks.
Which, respect.
Yeah, I mean, I would do that, I guess.
Yeah.
I would love it if the restaurant industry was actually a good industry. Because I feel like I could do a really good job opening a fast casual Greek spot.
Oh my God. You actually mentioned opening a cafe in our previous episode.
Well, it's my biggest dream.
Is that true?
Well, when I was in high school, there was this one girl who was a terrible student, and I was always sort of like, she's kind of a flop.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that you can be, you have to be a good student, not be a flop, but she specifically, I was like, you're sort of full of shit.
She was a bad student and had flop energy.
Flop energy, bad student, and also just sort of like, I mean, there's really no other way to describe it than just like full of shit. Like, when someone is like always talks a big game and you're like, say one thing that's true and interesting. And they're like, uh-oh, the wires are like
caught me.
coming out of their ears. It's literally like there's smoke coming out of their ears because the wires are crossed. So her whole thing was like that her dream was always to open a cafe on a Greek island. And she like wanted to be like a cafe during the day and then like a dance club at night. And I was always like, sweetie, you'll never do that. You'll never amount to anything in your life. And now that's literally my dream.
So you stole her dream.
Yeah.
But she didn't achieve her dream.
No.
So
and guess what? Neither will I. There is no way I will ever actually do that.
But the dream transferred to you.
Yeah. What would your dream be if you weren't doing comedy?
What would my dream be if I wasn't doing comedy? I mean, that's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, it's a few things. One, I've always said that if I didn't have internalized homophobia when I was a teen, I would have been a dancer. I actually feel there was a point in my life where I was like, oh, I'm going to sign up for a dance class. And then it was like, well, that's not what boys do. And I was like, right, good point.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of dance?
I don't know. I think I wanted to like take like a classic dance class and like get the basics and then sort of figure out my my specialty.
You have to pay your dues first. It's like how I cut my teeth in Boston doing stand-up comedy so that now I can be a queer podcaster.
Exactly. And so I was really sure like definitely, I was going towards sort of the modern dance. It would be like more conceptual. It would be kind of fun. You could put it in a music video, but it wouldn't be like, it's not like hip hop and it's not like ballet. It's somewhere in the middle.
What level of nudity?
Well, obviously I would play with that.
Yeah.
There'd be cutouts.
Of course.
Cutouts in weird places that you wouldn't expect. And there'd be specific moves that would like reveal the cutout. That would be like, oh wow, that's shocking.
Yeah.
So there's the dance dream. I feel like as an adult, obviously the dream is to have written a book and have it
1000%.
And just like I see myself like old, I have beard and I'm like living in the woods and no one has access to me.
Yes.
But I have written a book and every once in a while like a weird fan will come to the house and will like the lore of me will be like, I actually do always like have a tea with the weird fan that comes. And that is such a beautiful little image to me.
I know.
And the way that I crave quiet in that way is so deep, but I also, it's not real because I also crave loud and crave socializing at all times.
Well, obviously the only way to do that is to invest in real estate so that you can be both in the city and in the country.
Yeah.
It sort of all goes back to location.
Tell me about it.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I think it sucks that the dream of like a book being your thing is dead.
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. Okay, here's the thing with books, and I say this as we're both readers.
Of course.
Here's the thing with books. In our current society, they are purely symbolic. When you think of a book, it's simply like something that denotes intelligence, denotes reading. Oh, you wrote a book? You're someone who writes. The idea of a book on its own as an object that someone interacts with and reads and then gets something out of, that's like 0.0001% of what a book is in our current society.
Yeah, books are decor. Books are sort of personality signifiers. Books are a blueprint for a TV show or miniseries.
Of course. And books are a brand extension. Books are also the idea of authorship is just fully dead. I would say conservatively 98% of books are ghostwritten. So books are something that like the star of, and not even the star, the third supporting character in Vanderpump Rules will write. Yeah. And then they will go to promote it, and then they will be photographed at like one of the mid-tier fashion weeks.
Yeah. And honestly, that sounds like a dream.
Yeah, I guess. Do you know what's the other thing is with books? Wait, this is another thing like along these lines of like what books represent is books are also a tool for celebrities to enter a new space. And so to have like Natalie Portman's book club, Mindy Kaling's book club, Reese Witherspoon's book club, it is a way to, by the way, do fraud, because what you're doing is making a book popular with your celebrity so you can adapt it.
Correct.
That is literal fraud and you should be in prison, Reese Witherspoon. So it is a way to extend someone's brand, do fraud, create more prestige miniseries, and like
so that it's literally an in-house production team. It's a way to like build hype for the thing that you're going to make.
Well, Mindy Kaling the other day posted on Instagram about a book, and she said, the newest from my book studio. Now, I actually think it's beneath me to look into what a book studio is.
This is sort of a new term.
Yes, I've never heard this term before. Of course, it is an exclusive partnership with Amazon.
Book studio.
Yeah. I just let that sink in because I have nothing more to say. I did not Google it. I actually immediately closed Instagram and then bought property in the woods.
I bought property
Just
and a
like-
gun.
It's the idea that Mindy's like, she's having this busy day. And by the way, I have watched many of her shows and I support her.
Of course.
She's having this busy day and she's like, okay, what do we have now? Book studio. Got it. Takes a photo of the book, airbrushed to perfection, of course. And then she's like, US for my book studio, checks her bank account. She has another $30 million.
I mean, this is the supply and demand thing being fake again. It's
Yes.
like she has a book studio. It means nothing, but it is a brand partnership and she will be richer for it.
Right.
And why?
So she invented the concept of a book studio, something no one has ever heard of. Anyone who is the least bit intelligent, let's say you or I, is so traumatized by the phrase book studio that they won't look it up. So we'll never be exposed for the fraud that it is.
Yeah.
So she just has a book studio. It's sponsored by Amazon. The two people getting richer are Mindy Kaling and Jeff Bezos. The book, by the way, maybe not even written by a human author. I sort of like did a little clickaroo on Instagram and could not find any previous publications. And there's no one, literally not a single person will read this book. The idea that this book will be printed, sent to you, and then read is a joke.
It's false. It is.
And so
false.
money will be printed by the federal government for only Mindy Kaling and Jeff Bezos. And this is happening out in the open. This is on Instagram.
You should at least be quiet about it.
I know, at least have this is sort of, okay. One thing I respect about old-fashioned white-collar criminals is at least they didn't also want to be reality television stars.
Yeah. It was a more respectful time. And there was like a surprise. Like when you found out they were bad, it was like, oh, but they presented themselves so well.
Right, they donated to the ballet.
Yeah. And they like were part of New York high society.
Exactly. And by the way, why aren't Mindy Kaling should donate to the ballet
Duh.
so that she can fund your dance career?
She could single-handedly make me the biggest dancer in all of New York. I had a George-esque tweet, I feel like, in my
Okay.
head about Mindy Kaling the other day.
Okay.
That was along the lines of like something about like, I just found out Mindy Kaling is vapid and I'm pissed.
Wait, I feel like that's very you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, of course, the premise of calling something vapid is very me.
Because it was just like, I know there's like other elements to her backlash.
Yeah.
But it was also like a lot of it does stem from like, she's really like materialistic and climby. And it's like, yeah, like
Yeah.
she's in Hollywood and has been for her whole life. So
I gotta say, I've always been sort of a knee-jerk defender of Mindy Kaling. It's based on nothing. First of all, her shows are very watchable. Politics aside, I have been binging the sex lives of college girls.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Her shows are very watchable. I do sort of think it's cool that she's a woman of color that like came up in this comedy world and is now a power player.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, I just want everyone out there to know I have done no research. I actually sort of don't know what people are mad at her about. And so if it's something that I disagree with politically, then I'm on your side and I will be picketing her mansion. I'm not, like with all my ideas, I can change in the drop of a hat.
And if you, for some reason, are new to this podcast on, the 3-year anniversary, which it currently is, you should be warned. We don't believe in anything we say.
Actually, that is something that we should talk about.
And
What is the status of that?
It's still true.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's like of course we are going to have strong opinions. It's fun.
Right,
And then when someone's like, that's actually wrong, we're going to be like, okay, well, I don't believe it then.
right.
It's like, I'm not married to, it doesn't define me.
Of course. Every episode, we are building a tower using little bricks.
Yeah.
Those bricks are opinions. And let's say each brick has a little opinion on it. One is like Mindy Kaling is mother. Another one is capitalism is bad. We are using those as a means to an end.
Yeah.
If it makes sense to take the brick that says Mindy Kaling is mother and put it on the tower in order to build the tower that is the episode, I will put it there.
Yeah. And if it helps the tower to just randomly be like, well, actually, there's a capitalism is good brick too.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, well, then I'll use that.
Exactly.
You know what is funny? I know we've talking about the podcast while we make the podcast. I've been seeing these like TikToks that have like leaked onto Twitter of this like these two straight guys that do a podcast. And I'll just say like the most insane stuff ever. And then they're like kind of dumb, but it's like part of the appeal. And people share it and it's like, they share it just both to be like, these guys are dumb, but also to be like, this is charming. And
It would be my dream for anyone to say that about us.
and I actually am so like, as we're recording this, I keep thinking about like, are we saying anything that is extremely dumb that can be taken out into like a 25-second clip and will like be shared in this way? And actually hindering my performance.
Of course. Well, this is the thing. Okay, first of all, I mean, you raise approximately 1 million excellent points, but let me grasp onto 2 of them. First of all, one of the foundational sort of elements of this podcast, I think, is that through delving into idiocy, you can find something smart. It's like you have to one-up each other's dumbness like over and over and over and over again until it's almost like offensively dumb, until you're almost like making fun of a child because of you're like doing an impression of like a first grader. Like dumb, 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 dumb. And if you are dumb enough, you can get to the elemental aspects of human language and human life and then rebuild from the ground up something smart. Like the only way, like, and I actually think this is all of the comedy that you and I like in different ways. It's sort of like being as dumb as possible as a entryway into saying something smart. Yeah. So that's one thing.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is, for any of that to work, it has to be in context. So what stresses me out about our recent foray into video
yeah,
is that basically, if I say the dumbest possible thing anyone could say, I'm saying that in the context of this larger project. But if someone takes out that clip and posts it on YouTube, baby, I'm going to jail.
I mean, they need... Okay, here's what I propose to the team. Here's what I propose to the team. Okay, every clip that's shared on social media, there's big scrolling red text over it that says like, there's other context for this, there's other context for this. Like taken out of context, taken out of context.
You know what's crazy? That could be applied to literally anything that we get mad about on social media. And yet we only see, no?
That's righteous anger. Yeah.
Okay, you're right.
No, you're completely right, of course. Context is key, some people say.
Context is even more dead than cinema.
Wow. Call the t-shirt printers.
Literally ranking things that are dead. It's like context is number 1.
Yeah.
Civility. It's the 3 C's: context, civility, and cinema.
And books are 4.
Books are just a different thing now.
Yeah.
They're no longer like things you read. They're just like fetish objects.
They're actually, in that sense, they actually are definitely relevant still.
They're more relevant than ever.
As fetish objects. Yeah.
Okay.
So when we started recording this, we were like, we're sort of just going to do like an extended intro and like feel it out. And it's like the 3-year anniversary, but it's like, also it's whatever we want it to be because, borders, what's up with that? Exactly. We don't need to, we can't be tamed, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually think I know what the theme of this episode is.
What is it?
I figured it out halfway through. It is StraightioLab, redefining the brand.
Wow. And now that it's been made explicit, I'm nervous.
Yeah. And I think because we were doing a lot of like saying what our central tenets are in a way that really felt both necessary, sort of like a reintroduction.
Yeah.
It felt necessary and it felt fun.
Yeah. I guess my question is, like, are we redefining? Well, what is the brand?
Well, okay, maybe it's a brand summit.
Okay. I'm sort of like, I guess what's at stake is our ideological, what is at stake is the ideological framework on which the podcast takes place. So does that make sense? So it's like all these things that we're talking about, like where the state of the world, but the state of the world from our perspective.
Correct.
That is the framework on top of which we can have an episode that is about, bachelorette parties or about gender reveal parties or about like fraternities. We have to first like lay the groundwork.
Yeah.
And so I guess we're sort of relaying the groundwork.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, that is not engineering wise sound because the building already exists. So you can't just go back and redo the groundwork.
It's a renewing of vows. Yeah. I vow to always answer emails. I vow to bring a unique perspective and sort of, keep it light and keep it fun, but still be able to, every once in a while delve into something true and not be afraid of that raw truth hidden underneath the silly, the wacky, the polite even. and to always order seamless when you are cranky. Oh, and to always order Postmates when you are cranky.
You're the dude that gets the villainous Postmates. We're getting a standing ovation.
People are applauding. Oh, all of New York City. I can see them coming out of their windows and they're like, woo! They're like waving flags and stuff. That's amazing.
Wow, what a view.
Yeah.
Well, I vow to never get complacent and to always dig deeper.
Yes.
And to do it together.
True.
Okay. So we've redefined the brand. We've enforced the ideological framework.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have diagnosed most ills of the world.
I have a question because I was thinking about what I actually would like to do as a topic sometime.
Okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
And I want to hear what yours would be, but I also want to say what I think my topic would be if I were a guest on this podcast.
And this is sort of, we're like kind of planning ahead to maybe doing more episodes without guests where we like analyze a topic, just the two of us.
Yeah, it's like because guests are like, a lot of them are like really dumb.
We have to address that.
Like we have these guests on and they're like, oh, like I like made this TV show and like, oh, like I'm like, you know, one of the greatest authors of the generation. And it's okay, then like be funny.
The thing is, like, to be clear, it's not their fault.
No.
We are expecting them to come in and act as though they have been with us from the start, as though they have been with us in the meetings we had in mid-2019 where we were deciding whether or not the podcast would be called Straighter Things, StraightioLogy, or StraightioLab.
StraightioLogy is still funny.
Yeah, StraightioLogy is funny. And like, that simply is never going to be the case.
Well, no, and for context, put the big red over this. I'm kidding. Everyone we have on is a genius and a legend.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I think I sort of like that we've done this. We've resisted categorization as either like an improv podcast or an interview podcast or a culture podcast. And I think that is sometimes to our detriment. Like, I do think if we committed to one, we would certainly perhaps have more listeners. I think if we like branded and we were like, this is a podcast about movies, and each episode is about a different, the least successful movie of a specific year, and we talk about why it didn't do well or something. Okay,
somebody just stole that idea as a millionaire.
Or actually, that's a terrible idea because then people wouldn't have heard of that movie. So it's you have to like meet people where they're at. Like you're sort of like, you know what? It's like, here's an idea for a podcast. Each episode is about the defining movie of a different actor's career. And some of them are sort of unexpected.
Yeah.
So it's like some of them, for Robert Downey Jr., for instance, you know, it's like Soap Dish or something. It's like one that you wouldn't expect, but you're like, well, this is where he proved he could do comedy. You know, it's like, and that led directly to Iron Man.
Yeah.
But that's like an example of, it's like, that's a podcast that is easy to pitch. It's easy to do whatever. I would even say our podcast, easy to pitch, harder to listen to.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like there's a version of our podcast where someone comes in, is an expert on a topic, and we, from beginning to end, do an analysis of that topic.
It's like very literal.
It's
There's like a very literal reading.
And by the way, it could also be like, even something like, so some of our guests come in with a topic they are an expert in, and some of them come in with a topic that they literally know nothing about but think is funny to talk about. Even that range, it's like, already, what are the expectations?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have something like, you know, the segments are like commentary on segments.
Yeah. We're commenting on a podcast.
But here's the thing. Sometimes we're not.
And that's where it gets
where it gets tricky.
Yeah, that is tricky. But I like the option.
No. To be clear, I would change not a single thing. And I think we've never made a mistake in our lives. But why did this? Oh.
So the topic that I would think I thought of a good one that I would want to do. Standing still.
Wow. Okay, Jewel. That's Jewel, right? Or am I standing still?
I don't know.
It's Jewel.
Probably.
Okay.
If not, people are going to be mad at us.
I don't care.
Okay. It's Jewel now. Sorry, I'm loving that.
So
I can look into a camera.
Yeah, you love looking into the camera.
It's like I feel very
really,
like
you're finding your, yeah. Yeah.
I can punctuate any joke. Like I can say anything and look at the camera and it starts to read as a joke.
Well, you're giving Fleabag.
Do you believe him?
Pointing to not where I am. Wait, okay, so standing still. I love that.
I was thinking about it because I was like, we as gay people love to sort of the joke, it'll be like you look at a fashion shoot and like they're being weird on a chair and it's like they told the gay person to sit and this is what they did or whatever.
Yes.
And I do feel like as gay people we like to dance, we like to fidget. Whereas I feel like a straight guy is like the only person I know who can just be like completely like they'll be in like at an event and they'll be like, and not to say that straight people don't move. I do see them. I see movement plenty, but I think they're just much more capable of like fully standing still.
And the tension is that you see that and you're like, oh, that's quote unquote awkward. But guess what? From their perspective, they've never been more comfortable in their lives.
Yeah, it's no
literally
awkwardness.
just like they are comfortable in their own body, so they don't need to sort of do one hip out.
Sorry, I'm addicted. It's really
You
funny.
love it. Okay, so I love standing still.
Yeah.
I think it also points to sort of conservatism. Like standing still is refusing to pass new legislation. It is like the status quo is good. Why would I move when I am standing on my 2 feet?
It's also militaristic.
It's militaristic. They are literally like on guard to go into battle at any given time.
Yeah. And they're like listening to who's above them, who's like, don't move.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, easy.
Yeah. Okay, I love that.
Yeah. Do you have one that
I really feel like I came unprepared. Let me think.
And to the listeners at home, we didn't have this prompt beforehand.
Well, I do think something like, okay, here's mine. Advertising as art. Like, I think that can be a lot of different things. It's like, when people give industry awards to advertisements?
Yes.
Or when people like look back on an advertisement and think of it as like iconic in a way that you would think of a work of fiction or a work of art as iconic. I'm not even saying I disagree with it necessarily, because sometimes it is true that like the Got Milk ads are iconic.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
I mean, Budweiser.
Yeah.
Come on.
But I do.
I mean, what? That should be in the MoMA.
But I have to say, I do think it is. I think the Mad Men era, and this is coming from someone who has never seen Mad Men, so bear with me. The Mad Men era advertising boom led to so much, like it's a direct line from that to unboxing videos and sponsored content. Like there is something about like mixing art and commerce in that way and advertising becoming a cool thing. It's like the coolest thing you can do as a creative type is make an advertisement for a new tequila. I just think that's like the foundation of so much of the stuff we maybe talk about.
Yeah. I have so you know how I have straights all over the world.
Of course.
Straight guys that are touchy with me and make me think, maybe something could happen. And I know them for decades and nothing ever does. And it's sort of like, I guess you're my closest friend now. And so my Chilean straight, he works in advertising there and it is that vibe.
Yeah.
And it's like, he like makes like big neons that are like promoting, Coca-Cola.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, he like shares it like, this is so cool.
I mean, do you know what's the sort of a very quintessential millennial version of that? Painted ads in like Bushwick. Like when there is like a painted, a mural that is wait, oh my God, there's literally
Williamsburg does this all the time.
There is literally a Zadie Smith essay about this. It's called Find Your Beach. And she describes, maybe I'm butchering this, but I think she's describing a Corona ad that is painted onto like the side of the building that's like Find Your Beach. And she's talking about like how that appeals to a certain kind of consumer compared to like a less quote unquote sophisticated or like whatever kind of consumer. I wish I like remember the details, but I promise it's a good essay. Okay, it doesn't matter. The point is, I think it's like a fascinating. I think like the painted ads in Williamsburg. I think like also the way that advertising is like so sort of instilled in everything now. It's like, what is a brand activation? What is like, if you go somewhere, when we went to Vulture Fest, for example, and I don't say this to as a, to judge anyone. But you went to Vulturefest, every single room was like, had a branded name sponsored by 3 brands.
Yeah, which like I get it. You have to.
Of course, that's how you pay the bills. What do you? I mean, listen, we're not bringing in money for Vulturefest. It's not. It's not like
the StraightioLab brand is not strong enough. Which is why we need to redefine it.
Which is why we need to redefine it. And also the darkest thing with a lot of this is like, in some ways, ads are so much more influential than some of the great art of our time.
100%.
Got Milk is more influential than Moonlight.
Wow. The idea of winning an award for an ad is like, that was like the childhood idea of like, that's what a successful person is.
Yes.
Like, you work in advertising, so your job is good, and you win an award because you're creative and better at it than most people.
100%.
It was really having your cake and eating it too. I remember, maybe not as a kid, but as like a 15-year-old, when you're like, maybe I'll be an architect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like, oh yeah, that's the key. Work in advertising and win an award for it. Did you ever watch Queer as Folk?
I have seen Queer as Folk, but like, very much sort of compilations of the sex scenes on dailymotion.com.
Right.
But I have seen whole episodes of it.
Well, because Brian, the horny, hot one, he works in advertising.
Of course.
And
I mean, it's a classic day job.
Yeah.
Which also complicates the idea of it being straight culture, of course. But like, it stems from, I mean, the Mad Men era, you could argue, is like extremely straight, like self-evidently.
Of course. But I think it's straight because it's
a safe way for straight men to be creative.
Yeah.
It's like your kid tells you, I'm creative, and then the parents are like on the verge of tears. They're like, oh no, please don't say cabaret, please don't say cabaret, please don't say cabaret. And the kid is like, so I want to do advertising. And they're like, oh, thank God, thank Jesus.
100%. God.
Okay, so yeah, I think I really I think advertising as an art form,
yeah, I think that's very real.
Is a topic.
It's also it's also like the only art form where it's like you don't inherently get like a boost when you are gay. Like, I feel like in fashion, it's almost like, oh, you're gay, so that means it's imbued with more power.
Right.
Even when it's not necessarily. And like, same with art, I feel like it's like, well, he's a queer painter. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that. Well, oh, he must be good. But in advertising, it doesn't boost you at all. And it's like...
Interesting. Do you know what I think?
What?
In terms of like queer artists and queer, what was the other thing you said?
What was the other thing I said?
Queer fashion designers. I almost think sometimes it's the opposite, where it's like, well, you're gay, so like you're naturally an artist, but this person's straight. They had to work to be inspired and to like feel a sense of, feel out of place with the world. Like they are like, they're a real genius. You're just gay.
You're 100% right. And especially, there's no truer version of this than in acting.
Yeah.
When you're gay in acting, it's like, well, yeah. But when you're a straight actor, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
How did you get to do this?
Yeah, that's interesting.
You are one of God's perfect little gifts.
Yeah. I'll say this. Jeff Koons could never be a gay man.
Quite simply. Well, because a gay man would be like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
It's funny if he like got bonked in the head and like woke up gay and he was like looking at his own pieces and he was like, no,
like,
time to pivot. I'm starting a podcast. It's about movies that defined actresses. So, what do you think the future of the StraightioLab brand is?
I don't know. I've always felt like there needs to be an element when we like go out in the field. There's something about the four walls. There's something about, discussing all this stuff only theoretically, only with friends or acquaintances of ours, only with other people who, not always share our sensibility, let's say ideally share our sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
That feels almost cowardly.
Sure. We're in our bubble.
We're in our bubble. And I am not sure what the solution is. However, I think that is the next frontier.
Wow.
Reporting to you live from, the restaurant from the Bear. the real one.
Right.
Reporting to you live from and it can be it can be Fashion Week.
Sure.
It can be a therapist's office.
Okay.
Anywhere other than a podcasting studio or our bedrooms, really.
So you're saying you need to keep expanding.
Keep expanding.
This podcast, of course, started in pandemic.
Right.
And then, now we can even do it in person. And you're saying let's just keep going.
And actually, thank you for bringing up the pandemic, because don't you sometimes feel that when you start any project, your mindset when you're starting it is sort of what defines what it can be. And I think the fact that we started it literally during lockdown, I'm sure has prevented us from thinking outside the box in various different ways. Because in our minds, it's well, this is a podcast we do on Zoom.
Right. This is our Zoom call.
This is our Zoom call that we do with friends that we can text and ask them to be on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be I'm expansion, but not in a capitalist sense. In an artistic sense.
In a physical sense.
In a physical sense. Literally just be in any other room.
Just go places.
And actually, on a very literal sense, I am really excited to literally do shows in other cities.
Sure. Could be a sleigh.
Not to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
I have felt
Uh-oh.
that you are slightly less excited about the prospect of touring than I am.
I think I am.
I would love to know why. I'm genuinely curious.
I know, okay, a few things. Doing an out of town show here or there sounds fun, but a full tour, I worry about getting stressed.
Okay.
About being out of my routines for too long. I would get stressed about being away from, the dog and Misha. But I also am scared. I'm scared of if they're not fully fun, then I'm it's not worth it. And I don't know if we are, I don't know what, because we've never done it, I don't know what our out of New York or LA reach is.
Sure.
And we can look at the numbers somewhat, but I'm still what if we go to Pittsburgh and there's 10 people and we're huh? And I know there's beauty in that, of course. I have done out of town shows that have been flop, 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 and they are some of my greatest memories.
Of course.
But at some point I am but maybe I don't want that anymore. That flop feeling.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I am warming up to it. I think I was more hesitant about a full tour. But if it's a few dates here and there, that sounds fun. I also love my summers. And
this thing with you, we were talking to the person that is hopefully planning out of town shows for us. So, and she was when would you like to do these? And I was well, so a couple months ago, I was well, spring might be too soon, so let's maybe plan for summer. And you were well, no, summer is off the table.
I didn't say fully off the table, but I was summer is such a special time.
This is I cannot. I mean, summer is a special time, and that's why you would want to do something like that, because it's the audiences will be so happy, and it'll the weather will be nice. You won't be doing a show when it's snowing or raining, and people have to trudge to the bar or whatever. Imagine how fun it would be to look out at a sea of tank tops.
Sure, I can see it being fun, and Chicago is a place that I would love to go in the summer.
Sure,
it is fun, but summer is such a beautiful time.
I'm just so in, I guess I think what it is I sort of have a sense of urgency where I'm we have a sort of momentum going. I feel I feel really good about, honestly, all our recent episodes. I feel really good about our audience growing and whatever else, where I'm if we wait a little bit, we'll be yesterday's news. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is some honesty.
I'm sorry.
No, I respect. I know what you mean. And I think you also, after recently not working at Gawker, you feel
no, that's true. That's true. You're
sense of urgency.
Right. You're absolutely right. I do think that's a bigger part of it than I am willing to admit, that it's I feel sort of restless. I've now been sort of self-employed, let's say, generously, for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
And actually the idea of someone tomorrow calling me and being like, great news, you're going on tour. 15 cities, you start tomorrow. I would be in heaven.
Yeah.
I'd get a little souvenir from each city, a little magnet that said Detroit. I would go to all the museums.
Yeah. It could be beautiful, but like summer, I'm literally like, I'm planning so many things already. And I'm like,
What are you planning?
you have no idea. Okay, well, there's so many destinations that are actually close by.
Sure.
I want to go to the gay swimming hole in Vermont.
You are gay.
I want to go to the gay campground in Pennsylvania.
I cannot believe this.
I want to go to Fire Island. I want to go to Jacob Riis.
You are literally like Amish for being gay. It's crazy. Like
you only have to do these things in the summer. And it's like,
I cannot believe this.
Fall, winter, spring, I'm straight. I work in advertising. I'm completely stripped of my raw homosexuality. And then summer is when I really let loose and am my true and honest self. At least summer weekends.
Of course.
Like a summer week,
yeah.
like but a summer weekend. There's only like, how many of them are there? 12?
I see what you're saying. You're like, yeah, if you really count them and it's just the weekends, you're not talking about like taking time off. You're talking about the weekends.
Yeah.
Then yes, the tour would take up at least 2 of those, for instance.
Yeah. Well, we can do Chicago and then we can go visit my parents in Michigan.
I would love that.
That would be
fun. Wow. Okay. So I feel like we naturally, at first I was like, I don't want to be earnest. That sounds like daunting.
Yeah.
But I feel like we naturally transitioned into a like half earnest discussion.
I think that was juicy.
And I think it's I think it's interesting. I think our difference, I think we're so often on the same page in a way that I mean, knock on wood, but in a way that I'm very grateful for, that I sort of think when we have even very slight disagreements like this one, it's like productive because you can sort of take the temperature a bit.
Yeah. But I'm down.
No, I know. And I'm not going to like force it either. It's not, by the way, I'm not trying to be like on tour 24/7, but I do actually, in a weird way, I sort of like crave feeling a little more unmoored. Like what you're talking about in terms of your routine and stuff, I think I thrive a little more than you do in a more chaotic
environment. I could see that. I mean, when we went to LA, it was really fun.
That's the thing.
At the same time, never mind. I don't want to do that.
Okay.
Well, do you have any final thoughts? We've redefined the brand. We've set our vows.
We've said
forward.
What our dream topics would be if we do the podcast together. It's the podcast without a guest. We've talked about expanding the podcast, both in a capitalist sense and in an artistic and spiritual sense. I think I've never felt more connected as co-hosts.
Of course.
I think it is once in a blue moon that you can take a leap with someone and have it be like as generally seamless. As I was like, even saying generally, I was like, I don't even know what I'm like referencing. Like, it's, Lord knows we know many people in creative partnerships that do not have that blessing.
No queen. I actually have an idea for a final segment.
Okay, what is it?
In the spirit of expanding physically and in a capitalist sense, I think we should end on a fake ad read. And
okay,
and to show potential partners out there like how few crumbs we would leave after eating it up.
Okay, we can sort of. Do you want to do like you start and then we'll go back and forth?
Oh, very improv,
right?
I love that. Yeah. Okay. Are your teeth too yellow?
Are they too white?
The perfect teeth, studies show, are somewhere in the middle.
And no one will tell you that because that's right. The dentist lobby wants you to think the correct color for your teeth should be white. But more studies show that people with super white teeth die unexpectedly very young.
And that's why we are both huge fans of Colgate's medium white whitening toothpaste.
Colgate has partnered with Hailey Bieber to release a toothpaste that will get your teeth to be the exact right color. Hailey is in the lab, and she created this color in collaboration with Pantone.
And, I know what you're thinking. A celeb collab, how much did she actually work on this? And the answer is a hell of a lot more than you work on something.
She got a full PhD at Caltech.
Yeah.
In color science. Which is in the chemical engineering department.
And it was really hard for her to get in, and she was judged anonymously. She gave a pen name.
She gave a pen name, and a male pen name, actually, because, yeah, that's right. Even in this day and age, it's easier to get into the color science program in the chemical engineering department as a man than as a woman, even if your last name is Bieber or Baldwin.
So, needless to say, she has flipped the scholastic community on its head.
That's right.
She is changing science. And she is so thrilled to be announcing this product.
In partnership, once again, with Colgate, Caltech, the university, Hailey Bieber, and Pantone, the color company. I never sort of get what they do.
Not me
I guess
either.
paints?
Well,
now for your teeth.
Now for your teeth. And of course, it wouldn't be a product on StraightioLab if it wasn't also in partnership with the U.S. military, who it was tested on first. And they reported that it doesn't even hurt that much.
Exactly. And I believe them.
And I believe them. I choose to believe soldiers.
And so today, go on colgate.haileybieber.caltech.usmilitary.pantone.com/StraightioLab. And with code, yes, God, you can take an exclusive test where you give them your information and they tell you, obviously we said before that it's one shade of yellow. We lied. We were trying to oversimplify it. There's actually many shades of yellow. And you have to take a quiz and they will tell you what exact shade, micro shade of yellow that all fits into this general shade of yellow your teeth should be to match your skin tone. And that's right. We're skin tone inclusive.
Yeah.
To match your skin tone, gum tone, lip tone, and facial hair tone.
Yeah.
Because we're also gender inclusive.
Yes.
And it only costs 50 cents for an unlimited lifetime supply.
If you use the code StraightioLab, it's 50 cents for a lifetime supply
of toothpaste. And it comes all at once. So you better clean out that closet.
Yeah. Mama. Come out of the closet.
Come out of the closet and
put your toothpaste
in your lifetime supply of yellowing toothpaste in there.
So work
now.
Wow, that was a beautiful ad.
That was good.
I actually thought that was great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think advertisers are going to be impressed with that.
I know. And actually, I always go back and forth. We don't do a lot of our own ad. Actually, we don't do any of our own
ad. Yeah, currently zero.
And I go back and forth because on the one hand, I'm like, well, that doesn't sound fun. I don't want to read ads. But on the other hand, I'm like, what? So we're not as good as the people who read their own ads?
I know. It's such a funny thing of wanting what other people have, even when you know you don't want it.
Yeah. And also wanting to be well, if we did read our own ads, at least we would have the opportunity to be sort of self-satirizing about it.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we were advertising something truly abhorrently evil, we could sort of do it with a wink.
Yeah, we'd be good at it, I actually think.
And also sorry about bad ads that have been on the podcast. We're working on it.
Yeah, and we have no control, but sometimes we can't.
But we are working on.
Don't do this.
Yeah, we are working on some of the bad ones.
Okay. Well, subscribe to our Patreon.
And subscribe to our Patreon. Actually, we would love it if you could subscribe to our Patreon. And we would love it if you would actually post some new reviews on Apple Podcasts.
And that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
Happy 3
Easter.
years.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
And happy
Easter. 3 years. And happy Greek Easter.
Oh. Okay.
Well, goodbye.
Bye.